Welcome to RPI's CloudSuite Tech Talk series. My name is Keith Wayland, and I'm here to introduce today's presentation on v11 HCM differences. Info HCM CloudSuite is a tremendous product that we're very excited to implement. Today presenting, we have Ms. Jackie Dudas, one of our senior consultants and a frequent speaker and thought leader in the industry. Joining her, we have Ms. Ariane Silva, Ms. Casey Jennings, and Mr. Emmanuel Taylor. If you enjoy today's presentation, please note that we hold Tech Talks every Friday at noon Eastern, and you can see what's on the upcoming schedule on the Work Out Loud events page. We do encourage questions. If you have any, please type them into the QA chat box at the bottom of your screen. We're going to save them till the end of the presentation so as to not interrupt our presenters. And with that, I will give you Jackie, Casey, Ariane, and Emmanuel.
Thank you so much, Keith, and thank you everyone for joining our Tech Talk today. Today we're going to be talking about differences between GHR and version 10 or S3. And I'm going to start by kicking us off with some general functionality and then talk a little bit about performance management. And then I'm going to pass it to Ariane, Casey, and Emmanuel to talk about some more specific modules. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the resource record. So in GHR, one of the greatest things, which is actually pretty simple once you're used to GHR, is that everything related to a resource is all on one screen. You have performance information, you have disciplinary action information, you have work assignment information, pay information, even alternate rate information, all within one screen, delineated by different tabs on the left-hand side. Whereas in S3, all of this information would be scattered between or across the HR11, maybe the PA59, the PA90, PA26. But here, you don't have to worry about the form token names as much. You just go to the resource record, and anything you need is visible right from this initial employee record. It's a big win, so you don't have to navigate all over the system. Another update or a difference between S3 and GHR is the supervisory structure. So within S3, we are a little bit more limited to a direct supervisor and an indirect supervisor. Within GHR, we still have direct supervisor and indirect supervisor, but there's ways that you can configure the system and use the delivered matrix functionality to have multiple different supervisors for a single employee. So maybe you have someone who is the shift supervisor, maybe you have someone who exclusively approves time, maybe someone who does the performance appraisal, and maybe a different supervisor who's the team lead who deals with the employee on a day-to-day basis. Each one of these roles can be given some sort of access to the employee so that they're able to accomplish their tasks for this employee. Another thing that I want to point out is within S3 on the HR07, you could only have one employee per supervisor role, whereas in GHR, you can now have multiple employees for a single supervisory role. And the way this works is in GHR, it will display that for this supervisor role, there are multiple managers. And if you're thinking about that interface back to S3, the name that gets interfaced back to the HR07 is the first one that's added to the record or the one that's designated as the primary resource for this role. So essentially, there's a lot more functionality built in within GHR for different supervisory roles to be accommodated and accomplished for a single resource. History tracking. So in S3, one thing we always had to do was go to the HR10 and specify which data item attributes we wanted to be tracked for history. And it would be, just a real shame if you weren't using a field before and you didn't track it for history, you started using it and then forgot to update the HR10 to specify that you want history there, because you might not have it until you go in there and do so. And in GHR, you don't have to even think about that. GHR tracks every single thing you do within what's called the audit log. And again, you don't have to specify what fields you want tracked for history. All of those fields are going to be tracked. And we have a screenshot here, an example of an audit log. And essentially every single data item within GHR, every single business class, which is a table equivalent, has an audit log, and it's going to track all of the changes that were made and who they were made by. And then the screenshot in the bottom right here is also actually showing what's called the compare function. And so we've highlighted 2 rows within our audit log here and hit the compare log, and it's now showing us what changed. So what the prior values were and what the values were changed to. So this is a really quick and easy way to see exactly what has changed for the record. We're going to talk a little bit about proxy here in just a minute, but one thing I want to mention is that if you are proxied in as another user, the audit log will not only track the it's called the authenticated user. So if I log in, I am the one who has authenticated in, and then it's also going to track the regular actor. So if I have logged in as myself, but am proxying in as Ariane, it's going to show that Ariane did it, but I was the one that logged in. So excellent auditing capabilities here for tracking who did what to a record. Reporting. So within S3, we had a lot of canned reports, some that worked just fine for regulatory reporting and or, you know, maybe a benefits vendor. But within Global HR, we have a lot more functionality at your fingertips for reporting capabilities. So there are the standard required regulatory reports. There are also baseline benefit vendor reports that you can use. You can take the 834 file and modify that and use that for all of your vendor files if they'll accept that format. And then there's really quick and easy ways to create list view reports from within GHR. So all you would do is go create a report, select a list that you want to base that report off of, and you can filter the report by certain parameters and then publish it. And when a report is published, it's accessible to anyone within your organization as long as it's made public. And it's also going to pay attention to the security that has been assigned to the resource that is accessing it. So if I create a report to show all employee credentials and I make it public for the managers to see, the managers are only going to see the employees that report to them. They're not going to see everyone within the organization. They're only going to see their employees, which is wonderful. There's also a way to take these list view reports and make them visible to only certain groups. You would create what's called an actor group, and the actor groups would be the only people that are able to see these reports. So again, very quick and easy within the system. Additionally, anytime you're seeing a report, anytime you're seeing a list within the system, you can hit your options button and select export to CSV, and that's quickly going to dump out a CSV file of all of the information that you are seeing on your screen in that list. A lot more reporting functionality within GHR as well. So security differences. So within S3, we're used to LSF or Lawson security, and you kind of had to build those security classes and roles from scratch. You could select whether you wanted inquiry, previous, next, update, add, change, delete, access on a user. Within GHR, it's a little bit different. So security is, in GHR, there are delivered standard template roles. So they are some of the roles that you see here on your screen, followed by an _ST, which stands for standard template. And so Infor created these roles with the thought that most organizations have a lot of the same types of employees, types of resources, and they probably do some of the same functions, right, across different organizations. And so they created these standard template roles that are designed to be either used out of the box or they're designed to be modified. So if you want to take one of these security roles, you would copy it, and then you can also copy the security classes that roll into it and make modifications from there. So the major difference is that Infor is giving you tools to start with. You don't have to create your security from scratch. You have these standard templates to start with, which is wonderful. And speaking of tools to start with, we also have delivered workflows. So in S3, you're probably used to going to the PA50 and creating brand new personnel actions. You might have 5 actions, you might have 10 actions. In GHR, it's a little bit different. There are a set number of delivered workflows from which you would build the workflows that your organization needs. And in addition to these being actions where you enter information, there's also built-in workflow behind the scenes that routes these workflows to different users for approval. For the most part, most of these workflows, there's an initiator and then there's 2 levels of approval afterward. Again, these are templates that are designed to be modified if you need them to be. So you can take whoever, depending on who the initiator is, it might route one way or another way. You can also add in additional approval levels, or you can remove approval levels. But essentially, you're given a set number of update actions, of workflow actions, and from there you can create custom ones, you can modify the existing ones, but it's not completely from scratch like you might do today in your S3 on the PA50. Employee space. So employee space is a lot different in GHR than it is in S3. First of all, it's, at least in my opinion, it's a lot more pleasing to the eye. It's better to look at, and it's a little bit more intuitive for a user. When they're going in, they can clearly click on things. They can click My Reviews. They can go edit their profile. They can see their paychecks. And this is all also configurable. So I am currently working with a client who is planning to implement performance and goal, but we're going to do that a little bit later in another phase. And until then, we've replaced the My Reviews icon here. We've replaced that from navigating to a GHR module to navigating to the third-party outside system where they administer their reviews. So you can, this is really easy to use, really easy for the employee to go in and feel like they have some agency over their record. You can lock this down as much as you want, whether with security, or you can leave it wide open so that the employee can, some of the items we have listed here are requesting goals or development activities. They can access the internal career site and apply to different positions. They can perform their own self-appraisal and peer appraisals. They can complete transition tasks. So if they're onboarding or offboarding or crossboarding, those would be any kind of transition tasks they might have to complete as part of their transition. They can also maintain and respond to health components. So if they were assigned some, a flu vaccine or some sort of anaphylactic care, they can respond that they've completed this health component. And they can also report safety observations for review. If you want, the system can also be configured to show disciplinary actions or coaching for the employee. And just baseline, you can also allow the employee to come in and add their bank details. So where do they want their paycheck to go? What about a name change? We can add in that the employee can do a name change or an address change, anything that you might want the employee to take some responsibility over for themselves. You can allow that access within employee space. Additionally, within employee space, this is where the employee is going to enter their benefits life events and complete open enrollment. And the life event functionality and the open enrollment functionality are so much more intuitive and so much more user-friendly than we're used to in S3 today. One of the other differences that we don't have listed here within a slide between GHR and S3 is what's called Configuration Console, which is a tool that allows you to modify a layer of code that sits on top of the base layer. So you're not modifying the delivered code, you're modifying something that sits on top, which means it's still supported by import. And we can use Configuration Console to make changes to the look and feel of the system very easily. And that's something that I just wanted to point out within open enrollment and within life events. This is a tool that often comes into play to help the employee walk through the enrollment process a little bit more easily. Okay. Manager self-service, pretty similar, right? The manager can be allowed to do as much or as little as you decide as an organization. So obviously the the manager can see their staff. The view we have here is the basic staff view. And you can see I have employees listed on the left-hand side, and then whoever I'm highlighted on in the left-hand side, that information on the right-hand side is what's relevant to the person who's highlighted on the left-hand side. So I can access Woodrow Wilson's profile. I can see his fit analysis. So how well does this employee fit into the position that they are assigned to? I can see goals that Woodrow Wilson has either requested for himself, or maybe as the manager, I've assigned them to him. I can see appraisal history, I can look at compensation, and I can also look at notes, which I believe Emmanuel's going to tell us about a little bit later on. But basically, the manager now has a lot more access to the employee and has a lot more that they can view. You can also allow the manager to make updates to the employee record. So maybe if you have maybe if you have an employee who isn't often in front of a computer, maybe they need to update an address, but they're maybe not in front of a desk all the time, they can ask their manager to do that update for them. And if there's an organization you allow that, no problem. The system can take care of that, definitely. So again, as a manager, there's a lot that can be seen within manager self-service, and you can also drill down. So none of my staff here are managers themselves, but if they were, there'd be a little graphic in the bottom right that would show kind of like a reporting structure. If you clicked on that, it would show the reports that roll up to that person. And from there, you can take action on those employees as well. So if you wanted to do a name change, a transfer, a status change, whatever you're allowing the manager to do, as the upline supervisor, you can do that, or as the direct supervisor, you can do that. Within GHR, we also have medical leave tracking. So in S3, you had pretty much, you could do a status change. You could change the employee's status that would bump them in and out of different eligibility groups. And then in addition to that, you pretty much just had the LP 52, which is where you would track employee leave. And you still have all of those same fields available to you within the leave of absence module within GHR, like estimated return, reason for leave, all sorts of information to that effect. But in addition to just that tracking, there are different delivered actions for completing a leave. So both the employee and the manager are able to request a leave. And then depending on who requests it, it might route for approval to different resources within the organization to approve or deny it. And then the employee can also go into their profile and view their leave record, so as the administrator and the manager. And then the manager or an administrator can also bring the employee back from leave. So this goes back again to those delivered actions that are used as standard templates in the system that you can modify as needed, just a little bit more functionality around that whole leave administration process. And now I want to talk a little bit about proxy. So in S3, it used to be a little bit more complex to handle proxy. So if someone was going on vacation or a sabbatical for an extended period of time, you would have to go into the HRO7 and manipulate who the direct supervisor was, or create some sort of customization within MSS to allow different managers to be able to see the absent manager direct reports. Within GHR, it is so much easier. There is a way to set up, under proxy management, you set up who is proxying. So again, if I want to log in as Ariane, Ariane would be the grantor. And then I would assign whatever roles that Ariane has that I want to have on her behalf to that proxy. And then I would assign myself to be able to access that proxy. So in the bottom right of the screenshot, you can see there's a little circle around proxy. and then an icon or a box pops up that says switch to proxy, and you choose which role that you've designated as a proxyable role that you want to proxy into. In real life, what did we pick here? In real life, you would probably never proxy in as another employee, but we do that a lot for testing. We set up proxy and we proxy in as the employee to check security, to check that the look and feel is right for the employee. In this example, we're proxying in as the manager, and the screen will refresh and it will come up and show, let me see if I have that screenshot. The screen will refresh and it'll come up and show, yep. So here I'm Melissa Olson, proxy mode for Sarah Tisdale. So it's gonna look just like what Sarah sees when she logs in, but it's me, Melissa, logged in as Sarah. All right, now we're gonna switch gears and talk specifically about performance management. Over the last year, Infor has made a lot of changes to the performance management module. In S3, we pretty much only have the PA26, and there's some decent functionality in there where it tracks the last review date, the next review date, but there is no functionality within S3 to actually administer the performance appraisal, right? You're taking the results that you get from an appraisal that you've administered elsewhere, whether it's a third-party system or in spreadsheets or in Word documents, and you're loading that score into the PA26. In GHR, not only can you actually administer the performance appraisal, but there are a ton of new kind of mini modules, is what I'm calling them, that Infor has created and released over the last year to help with ongoing and continuous performance so that the manager and the employee can kind of have a dialogue throughout the year as opposed to one giant performance appraisal, either on an anniversary date or a focal period. And so I want to talk quickly about some of these mini modules, these newer continuous performance pieces. And the first one I have listed here is awards. So within the new employee engagement or continuous performance module, there can be awards and nomination programs set up. So if you want to set a program up to so that employees can nominate each other for maybe a stewardship award or some type of award that they can either be just recognized for or that they can also be compensated for, you would set up this program, and then employees or managers can nominate other employees for the program. You cannot nominate yourself, I found out as I was testing, but you can nominate other employees for this performance award. And then all of these mini modules can be pulled into the performance appraisal. And so you can kind of, I forget where I heard this, maybe I saw it from Infor, but basically all of these mini modules are designed, if you set them up and push them out throughout the year and you have employees complete these, the appraisal essentially writes itself, right? So awards can be pulled in and you can choose which nomination statuses you want to show within the appraisal. Check-ins is another piece of continuous performance. So check-ins are these periodic meetings that the employee and the manager can set up throughout the year, just as literally all it is a brief check-in. So it's kind of, you can set it as an accomplishment, a task, or a challenge. And there's a free text section where the employee and or the manager can kind of just say, you know, what they talked about. Maybe it's a time management challenge. Maybe it's a task that the employee needs to do. But basically, again, this is something that the employee and the manager are going to see on the engagement dashboard, and or it can be pulled into the performance appraisal if you're still doing a traditional annual performance appraisal. Raves are a way to send praise to a colleague. So within the employee engagement, I can see anyone who has raved for me. I can also see the raves that I have sent for other employees. And this is just kind of a quick blurb about, you know, hey, Ariane, thanks for your help with that email, or, you know, hey, Emmanuel, thanks for jumping on this presentation with us, that kind of thing. and the employees that we assign that to, their managers can also see it as well. Pulse surveys. So pulse surveys are sets of questions that the administrator has defined prior to pushing it out to the managers and employees. And they're designed to just be kind of a fast and frequent survey or set of questions that the manager and or the employee can use to send to each other. So you might set up a pulse survey that says, you know, what are you working on this week? Do you have any feedback from me? What are some items that I need to work on? And the manager and the employee, again, will pull these predefined questions and push them out to each other for that continuous feedback. And this is just a screenshot of what that looks like. I believe I'm in as the employee here, and you can see I have my 2020 engagement year set up. I have my check-ins in the top left. So again, check-ins can either be tasks or challenges or kind of a kudos. And then you can see I have accomplishments and challenges next to that, and then open tasks beneath it. And then there's a little bar chart kind of in the bottom middle to show the status of all of these continuous engagement mini modules. And then if I had included it in the screenshot a little bit lower, you would see raves that I have received and raves that I have sent. But this is essentially the engagement dashboard. And then, like I had mentioned before, all of this pulls into the continuous performance appraisal if you want it to. So again, awards, check-ins, pulse, raves, these are the new pieces of it. Activities are related to learning and development. Goals has always played nicely with performance, and criteria is what you set up as the actual questions or the meat of the performance appraisal. And again, all of that can pull into the appraisal. And this is just a quick view of those items pulled into the appraisal, right? So I have my evaluate criteria section. I have two criteria sections here, and then it's showing my pulse, right? So I have the employee response and then the manager response for all of these pulse questions that have been set up throughout the year and responded to. Next, I have the rave section. So these are raves that, it's showing raves that I've received, but if I scroll down a little bit lower for the screenshot, you would also see raves that I've submitted. And this is in the traditional performance review. So I am seeing this as the employee, and my manager will also get to see these raves within the performance review. And lastly, I want to show check-ins. So again, check-ins are just these quick meetings that can happen throughout the year, and it's displaying all of that right within the performance appraisal for both me and my manager to view. So I just breezed through a lot of that pretty quickly, but I want to leave an opportunity for the rest of the team here to get to share what's exciting for them about differences between S3 and GHR. So with that, I will pass it to Emmanuel, and please do enter questions in the chat box.
Great, thank you, Jackie. Hello, everyone. I am Emmanuel, and I will be going over notes, employee relations, and health and safety. Okay. The notes feature can be used for various parts of the system, but glides very nicely with employee relations. We'll briefly cover notes, but we'll mention it again later on when talking about coaching, discipline, and grievance. When an employee commits an infraction, one option a manager, generalist, or employee has is to create a note about the incident. A note is a recorded information about an incident that includes such information as the date, type, and comments. Both an employee and a manager can create a note about an incident. However, the employee may not see the same information as the manager, such as source types. Sources can be optionally used by the manager or generalist to specify from where the note came from. Some examples of a source type could be a manager observation, maybe a time system, or a witness. Okay. With employee relations in S3, the PA59 is available and allows for the tracking of action dates, types, status, reported by, outcome, and steps. GHR's employee relations has more of an expanded view. The delivered setup includes categories, which is optional, but allows for the grouping of disciplines for reporting purposes. An example of a category would be attendance. While there can be many attendance-related infractions, the category allows for them to be grouped. This can be helpful when viewing how many folks are absent down to the location and/or position. Coaching is a tool to document a meeting between a manager and employee. Typically, this is used to address employee behavior before the issue becomes severe enough to require discipline. A manager uses coaching to help prepare for the discussion with the employee and to document the discussion. GHR takes it a step even further and allows managers to attach any documented coaching sessions to a discipline. This is useful in a scenario where a manager may already meet with the employee regarding the same issue on multiple occasions, and it is time to enact progressive discipline. On the discipline itself, the official GHR term is associate. The manager can associate any relative notes and coaching sessions to the discipline. From an HR perspective, this can be extremely helpful in tracking down any relative information for a particular incident, as it will be compiled in a single place. There's a section within the coaching and discipline for tracking correspondences with the employee, whether they are contacted by phone or email. If the email option is chosen here, the system will open additional menu items that allows you to tweak the subject and the body of the email, and it will be sent there on the spot from the system. Another feature of the discipline piece includes an out-of-the-box discipline process flow. This flow allows for the setup of disciplines when submitted for review by a manager to go through approval levels to include their manager and however many levels above them, as well as HR approval before it can be issued. This setting is helpful, especially for any disciplines that may be severe enough to need further review prior to being approved. One of my absolute favorite pieces regarding the employee relations module in GHR is the ability to create document templates for your managers. Document templates are forms that can be printed out with any auto-populated information specified in the template, such as employee ID, their name, incident date, or behavior based on the entered fields on the coaching and discipline forms within the system. You can also create a calendar for your organization if policies for grievances use workdays to determine when responses are due at each step. Response time for grievances. There are response time for grievances that can be set, like yellow and red alerts. If a grievance response are due within 10 days, if that's how your organization has it set up, then the system can be set to show yellow alert status at 5 days and then a red alert status maybe at 3 days. Okay. All right, on to health. I'm going to kind of group the occupational health and safety, but I'll also talk about them on an individual level. So within the S3, health and safety are both tracked on the PA90. It allows for the tracking of what you see here on the screen, which is the category and types, incidents, injury and illnesses, and limited reporting. While GHR occupational health and safety are in a way intertwined, they can be used completely independent of one another. Within the occupational health module, health components or health requirements are tracked, such as vaccinations and titers. GHR's safety module is able to cover creating and recording safety incidents and near misses, create observations and reports, set up accident injury types and severities, as well as create safe behavior categories. Where health and safety meet in the middle is when a safety incident may require that an employee follow up with a health requirement. An example would be if there is an incident where an employee steps on a nail, a tetanus shot health component can be assigned to the employee and then associated to the incident as an incident follow-up. Additionally, the out-of-the-box health and safety modules also include OSHA reporting, which, when set up, is automatically generated based on any entered incident data, and days without incident form can also be set up, as well as a pull analysis reports on by location, recurrence, injury type, and even by position. Automated email notifications are also delivered, and it's as easy to set up as creating an email template that uses variables for employees, managers, and whoever needs to be notified. Okay, there are many pieces of the health and safety modules that are automated notifications can be set up for. With the safety module, automated notifications can be created for important time-sensitive items. An example would be if an investigator is being assigned to an incident, a notification will automatically be sent to that employee that has been assigned as the investigator. Or if a follow-up is created for an incident for an employee, they will be sent in automated messages with the details of what they need to do to complete that follow-up action. Okay. Within the health module, automated emails can be sent upon the assigning or completion of the health component. Okay. And thank you. I'll turn it over to our benefits presenter.
Thanks, Emmanuel. My name is Casey Jennings, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about benefit differences within GHR. So the first one we're going to touch on are our prerequisite and restricted plans. Within GHR, we now have the option to assign a prereq plan. And what that means is the employee must be enrolled in that plan before they can enroll in another one. A great example is an employee must be enrolled in a high deductible plan before they can enroll in the HSA. So this really helps with that process of only being able to use HSA if you're in that high deductible plan. Another example is employees may have to be enrolled in voluntary employee life to be able to have voluntary spouse or child life. So we can also set that up to have the system help us administrate that. The other piece of this is restricted plans. And with that, we can set up the system to prevent someone from enrolling in a plan if they're enrolled in a specified plan. An example here is if you're enrolled in a high deductible plan, you shouldn't be allowed to enroll in an HSA plan. So we can put that HSA plan as a restricted on the high deductible, and the system will actually help us prevent that from happening. The next thing we're going to talk about is verification for documentation and dependents. One of the cool things with GHR is the system allows different statuses for documentation and dependents. So within a life event, we can set the system to require documentation to be submitted before that enrollment event can be finalized. And with that, the documentation can come over with a pending status, and then a benefits administrator would review the documentation, make sure it's accurate, it's not something fake, and then we would update that status to approved or confirmed. Same thing with dependent verification. So once we have all of the necessary information that we need on a dependent, we can go in and change that from pending to confirmed, and that will then allow that dependent to be enrolled in the benefit. This is one of my favorite features of the benefits within GHR, and it's called the enrollment view. So what this does is, from a benefits administrator perspective, we can actually see what the employee is viewing through the enrollment event. So as we're troubleshooting, we get a phone call from the employee and they say, I can't enroll in this option, can you help me? Within S3, we'd have to either ask them to screen share or send us screenshots or try to communicate over the phone to figure out where they were. With here, we can actually go right into GHR and we can click into the enrollment view, and it helps with troubleshooting. So we're able to see what the employee sees. we can make sure that they have all of the options. We can make sure that they have the benefits. If there are any error messages that they need help with, we can see that exact error message. So from an administrative perspective, this is huge. And from all the clients I've worked with, they've really enjoyed this feature. The next thing we're going to talk about are communication options. So one thing, if you haven't noticed through the slides that Jackie and Emmanuel have gone over, GHR has truly enhanced communication within the system. So the same thing for benefits. So a couple of the options that we have are delivered email templates, which Emmanuel touched on for health and safety. And what this does is we build out templates within GHR, and we use variables. So variables can be email addresses, the employees' names, a benefit start date, a benefit end date. We can put all of these variables and make the emails truly personal when we go to send it. So we have the options within the enrollment view to mass send emails based on the status. And so that's really helpful because we can tailor messages to where the individuals are within the enrollment process. So if at their very beginning, we can have an email template drafted that lets them know the next steps they need to take, their timeline, that sort of thing. And then as they work through the process, if they're at the very end, but maybe they haven't submitted it, we can tailor the email template for that group to say, hey, we recognize you've finished your enrollment. Can you please make sure you've submitted it? So that's kind of one of the nice features. And it's really easy to do. We just have to right click on the status and we can mass send an email. Another new communication feature is the notifications for evidence of insurability. So as we track evidence of insurability within the system, and we have it set up on the life insurance plans, we can send notifications right from there. We have the options to do initial and also reminder. As I had just touched on, talking about status tracking for enrollments. So within the enrollment event, life events or open enrollment, Infor has delivered these statuses, and as an employee works their way through the enrollment process, they move into the different statuses. And what this does is it allows the benefits team or the benefits administrator to truly track where these people are within the process. This comes in really handy during open enrollment, especially when you are getting near the end. You can see how many people have completed, how many people are still left that need to go in and process their elections. We also have the option to show these statuses in different ways. So on the screen, we're showing it in a bar graph. We have options to show it in like a pie chart with some percentages. We can show it in a list view that have percentages. And so this is helpful when an executive may come and say, hey, where do we stand? So you can easily change the view, export it, and send it off to them. This is helpful rather than having to dump all of the information into an Excel and try to sort and then filter and figure out how many people have completed each step. So this is a really cool feature, mostly used during open enrollment. Another one with the enrollment, is electronic signatures. So within the enrollment events, we now have the option to use electronic signatures when an employee submits their enrollment. So we have the option to do none if we don't want to do that. We also have the option to do a checkbox, which is them acknowledging the statement that we determined, or they can actually type in their name as a true electronic signature. Within that, we're able to change through Configuration Console, as Jackie had mentioned earlier, the statement that pops up within that electronic signature box. So that can truly be customized to what you as an organization want it to say. The system also has a timestamp associated with it. So every time an employee submits their enrollments and does this electronic signature, there's a timestamp. So we as benefit administrators are able to see when this resource or employee submitted their benefits. And then the last thing we're going to talk about relating to benefits is the employee view. So as you can see on this screenshot, the employee view for benefits is extremely different. It's similar to the rest of GHR with the navigation on the left-hand side. And then as we scroll through, we have the different tabs, so we can have some instructions. We're able to see our current benefits. And then as we get down to make our current elections, we're able to scroll through the different plans. We can select them, we can choose our option, we can choose our life insurance amount, and then at the very end, if I were to scroll through the screenshot, we'd have a review and submit page, and that's kind of like our summary page. So on there, we're able to see if there's any error messages or warnings, depending on how our enrollment is set up. We may have missed an election somewhere. It may be a warning that we may have to fill out evidence of insurability paperwork. We're also able to see a summary table of what all of our benefits add up to. So with everything we've elected, we can kind of see the cost before we submit. And that's super helpful from an employee's view, rather than having to go back and add up every single premium for all of the benefits that they've done. It gives it to them in a really nice table on the summary page. So that is it for benefits. And we are going to pass it on to Ariane for payroll.
Thank you, Casey. My name is Ariane Silva. I'm an HCM consultant here with RPI. And for our last topic today, we are going to talk about global HR. So what are the main differences between S3 payroll and your brand new global HR payroll? M4 released global HR last year. So it was a controlled release. And since then, they have been working pretty hard on updating the system, on creating the new enhancements, making sure that the new system is up to date and there has all the capabilities that you currently have in S3 today, but in a very, very cool, different feature, right? So let me walk you through how is this next generation payroll, and we can talk a little bit more about the differences. So GHR payroll is supposed to be part of your global HR. So for those of you who are already working and have implemented global HR, payroll should come in as just an additional component, right? So you would have a setup on your organization that you will be able to just check a flag, and that will enable your payroll. This is pretty much part of Infor CloudSuite HCM solution, right? So global HR sits with talent management, talent science, workforce management. And implementing global HR, pretty much the idea is that you're going to have a fully integrated system, right? So if you remember the presentation when Jackie showed us the resource data, if you were working in Payroll S3 and GHR, you have to pretty much feed two different systems, right? So you need to enter your system of records is GHR. You're gonna change all the resource information in GHR, and you need to run a lot of interfaces going down to S3, a lot of interfaces going back and forth, right? If you're using GHR benefits, you need to send down your benefit deductions. All your hours worked are coming back. So all of this, with the new global payroll, this is going to go away. There are no more interfaces that you will need to maintain. So this, I think, is the the biggest win, right, when you move into the cloud. The capability and all the capabilities that you actually have within the CloudSuite. So the second thing that I want to touch base is the integration with CloudSuite Financials. So GHR Payroll was built pretty much to be fully integrated with financials. So as soon as you post to the GL, as soon as you close your payroll, you're posting that, the tables on the finance side are going to be updated. So let's talk a little bit more about how this looks like, right? So this is the payroll administrator homepage. So for the payroll folks, they're probably watching this, you might not be very familiar with GHR. If you are already, that's great, right? But if you're not, I believe the biggest difference here is going to be in terms of navigation, because M4 tried to pretty much move to the new system, but maintaining all the current functionality, right? So it's not going to change in terms of processing. You're still going to be able to do everything that you were used to, but I think the main learning curve here is related to the navigation. So when we see this dashboard here, pretty much this is the payroll administrator view. You will be able to see this cycles in process is pretty much the status of all the cycles that you are running right now. And then you have quick links. So from here, from my main page, I can go straight to the resource data, which is your HR11 now. You can go straight to bank details. So you can access different places really easy from your home page. And on top of that, you will still be able to see deduction alerts, tax alerts, all of information that you as a payroll administrator need to pay attention to, right, in order to process your payroll in GHR. One nice thing that it seems a lot of clients, they are actually really happy with that. Now you can see the BSI messages on GHR as well. You don't need to log back in to BSI to see all those messages. So they are going to be here. It's fully integrated as well with BSI and all your tax factor. And on top of that, let me see if I want to touch base on something else. So on the left side, you will see the different sections. So we have the resource maintenance, deduction maintenance. So the biggest difference from S3 to GHR is right now you can see they decided to group similar items together in a very intuitive way. So under the deduction maintenance, for example, you have, all your deduction codes, your deduction class, all the jobs that you would have to run if you change a deduction, you need to flow that down to the employee. So you will have the jobs in the same place. So GHR is very process driven, right? And this is really helpful if you are brand new, if you're not used to the tool. The system helps you and guides you through what steps are next. Now let's take a look on a specific form here. I don't know if for those of you who are already on S3, you might be a little sad, but there are no more form tokens. So, PR05, PR115, PR21, all of this is going to go away with global payroll. So the idea here is, again, this is supposed to be a very user-friendly system. So it's going to guide you to the process. There's no need to remember form names and go back and forth between different screens all the time. And I think that's a big difference, right? And it takes some time to get used to it. the lock payroll functionality. This is when we compare S3 to GHR, this is completely new, right? For those of you who are in S3 right now, what you do pretty much is when payroll is processing, you have to tell everyone, please get out of the system, no more actions, no more transactions, right? So all your end users are now accumulating work that they cannot keep in the system. This is also going to change, right? In GHR payroll, you will be able to process your payroll at the same time that your HR or benefits team are keying in and processing transactions. This is a very, very nice feature, and you can not only lock a payroll, but you can unlock a specific employee. So when you unlock that employee, you can make any adjustments needed, and then you unlock again. And then you lock that again, and then you will be able to move forward with your payroll processing. This is the view of a payroll cycle. Pretty much your new HR00, but now looks a lot more nice. So there is, again, the system is going to guide you through, right? So if there are any errors, you're going to be able to see the errors and address those before moving forward. When you lock payroll, you'll be able to see the little icon on the payroll cycle. If you guys can see the first payment schedule there, it's locked. So you pretty much be able to see that icon. And the one under, we have a warning message. So I can just hover the mouse and I'm gonna be able to see what is that error. Another big difference here is when you run an action on Landmark, right? Global HR is on Landmark. Pretty much this is gonna, the result of that action is gonna display on your screen right away. So here I can calculate payments, and I'm gonna have a list view. In GHR we call this list view, right? You're gonna have a list view with all your employees. So there is no need to, run a job and wait for it and view on a different screen. Here the system's gonna spell out the result of that job right away, right on the screen, and you're gonna be able to export that to CSV or PDF right away. Pretty much every screen in GHR is gonna allow you to export that to CSV. Very flexible in terms of reporting as well. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But the payroll cycle processing is the place where the payroll administrator is going to go in order to run their payroll, right? And again, the system is going to show you all those icons, and it's going to be based on what is the next step. Let's talk a little bit about configuring forms and reports. So I just mentioned that Global HR and Global HR Payroll, they are very flexible, right, in terms of you can change a form. And Jackie mentioned, and I'm just going to talk a little bit more about that. Configuration Console, it's a very powerful tool within GHR. And in our example here, I changed the employees and cycle. I configured the field because I wanted to see the total FTE on this report. So you can use Configuration Console and change, or you can change a field name or something like that. And this will be rolled out for all your employees. But if you want a field that is specific to your report, or something that you were not going to roll out for everyone, you can create a report and personalize that report. So you could possibly add that total FTE only on your report, and the rest of your population would see the original employees in cycle form. And again, you know, the analytics within GHR are incredible. There are a lot of things that you can do, a lot of possibilities. So it's very exciting. I think it's a work in progress, right? It's pretty new, but it's very exciting when you see what the tool can do. And with that said, I think we are going to open up for questions now. Thank you so much.
Hi, and our first question for today is around disciplines. The question states, you mentioned that the delivered discipline flow can be set to go through various manager levels in HR for review. Can it be set differently according to the discipline step? Emmanuel, do you think you could answer this one for us?
Absolutely. Yes, the approval levels and HR approval is set up particularly at the step level and can differ step to step. An example would be if a first offense can require no approval at all, where a suspension can be set up through manager, +2, and HR approval. Also note that the flow will go through all manager approval levels prior to moving on to the HR approval.
Awesome. Thank you, Emmanuel. The next question we have states, is there a contract module associated with HR/payroll? Jackie or Ariane, do you guys want to take this one?
Sure. So Infor is working on their teacher's contract. I believe the expected release date is the second half of 2021. So it's not ready yet, but they are working on it. I think a lot of the school districts are asking for it, so it's coming up.
Yeah, and in addition, I'm sure you're probably concerned mostly with the teacher contract pay portion of it, kind of like those CW screens that you're used to in S3. But there is functionality to manage actual contracts. So basically the paper contract that someone would sign to sign on to their job. So there is functionality for that, but it does not have any bearing on payroll yet.
Awesome. Thank you both. Our next question is about leave of absence. Can emails be sent that provide information about LOA laws and regulations and other items?
Yeah, so there are a lot of delivered email templates and email functionality right within GHR. So under, as an administrator, under some of the basic setup, there are email automation rules and email templates that you can set up, and there are a few that have to do with leave of absence. In terms of actual LOA laws and regulations, you would probably have to include that in your email template if you knew that information. You also might be able to set up an IPA that looks for that kind of information and sends it to your administrators or whoever else would need to know that. But all that's to say that there's a lot of delivered email functionality, and then IPA or import process automation is a wonderful tool that can do whatever you need it to do, within reason. But anything that's not delivered functionality, IPA can pretty much do for you too. So there's a lot of flexibility with emails there.
Awesome. Thanks, Jackie. Another question we have is, does the audit trail track if a proxy grantee performs an action on behalf of the grantor? Emmanuel, do you want to touch base on this one?
Yeah, sure. Great question, actually. Yes, the audit log is able to distinguish actions between the proxy grantee and grantor.
Yeah, and just to add to that, what it does is it says the authenticated actor is whoever logged in. and the actor is whoever they're proxied in as. So you'll be able to see that it was two different user IDs, both within the audit log.
Very cool. Does anybody have any other questions for us? If you do, feel free to type them in the Q&A box. All right. Well, that's all we have for today. If you guys come up with questions after the presentation, please feel free to reach out. And thank you for joining us.